Good morning. Our opening words this morning are a responsive reading, and the response is, "This is the home that love made." And I'll gesture when it's time for that line. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love that the founders felt when they planned out these walls and raised these ceilings above us. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of all who have worshiped here, those who have celebrated and grieved here, the babies dedicated, couples married, and family members mourned here. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of our children as they learn and laugh together, and our youth as they grow into their own sense of purpose and meaning. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of the staff who have served it, full of their hopes for this congregation, their hard work and acts of dedication. This is the home that love made. It is full of the love of the choir, the love made so clear in the voices lifted here on Sunday morning. This is the home that love made. It is full of our love, the love of this community, despite our differences and our disagreements, the love that holds us together as a people. This is the home that love made. Can you feel it? May that love be with us always. I'm still in vacation mode, but it is time to sing Now the Time is Approaching. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in our opening hymn this morning. It's number 144 in your gray/fabric covered hymnals.
may be seated. Good morning. Yesterday, I went out to feed my chickens, and I stepped with the back of my heel down the slope to the chicken coop. Stomp, 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 and all of a sudden, my feet went out from under me. My back, which has never in my life cracked, went and I flipped back, but then the stomach muscles kicked in, and I flipped forward, and I landed splat on my tummy, and it was just so painful and uncomfortable, but now my back bends in a way that it hasn't since I was 32. So did anyone else fall, or are you staying clear of the ice? All right, we salted this walkway, so we're hoping that, and this one too, so we hope you stay safe out there. Folks at home, good job. Stay warm and safe. Welcome to the First Parish in Bedford, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. We know that some of you online are cozy at home, and we thought we'd wave to you a moment. So turn around and wave, and we know you're waving back. This is one of those days when I think there's more out there than here, and that is just fine. We're all together united. We are gathered by shared values, united to live for the world we dream about, to be good companions, faithful servants of our faith and one another, to show up at community hour with something yummy you baked, to join a team you haven't thought of joining yet just because you think you might have something to contribute, to come early and often to the auction on, April 1st, which is not an April Fool's Day thing. Maybe you're someone who hasn't signed up for Ferry Beach, which we know is so great and hasn't happened in a number of years because of COVID. It's Mother's Day weekend. I hope to be there with many of you. If you are like, oh, this is for long-timers or some other nonsense like that, don't think like that. Just think, this is my place. This is the place where I come to for sustenance and hope and love and friendship and joy. And that weekend is a really fun way to be a part of that. And if you are not at Ferry Beach and you're here, no worries. It's also happening here because we are a community that takes our commitment and our love out beyond the walls of this church and out into the broader community in so many ways, seeking justice and joy and dreaming about and building about the world we want to live in. We have a weekly community hour. You can always find it behind the doors behind me, and it's right after the service. If you are new here, look around for someone who, I think we're starting this tradition. Is this true of folks who are on membership or who are like, I'll talk? Yes. Look around for a red cup, a person holding a red cup. Random floating red cup, no. Just a person holding a red cup. Those people are interested in hearing what brought you to this community and what you're looking for. And let's see, a couple other things. If you want to stay in touch and you see a little blue card in your pew, you could fill it out. Tell us about you, ask a question or two. You can sign up for a You, and You 101 and a First Parish Bedford 101 like mini class led by Annie and the membership committee. And that is happening on March 12th. It's okay if you've been here a long time. You might be interested in how we talk about all the reasons of what it means to be UU and what it means to be a UU here. There will be a sign-up online, but if you can keep it in your head, that's great. It's March 12th after church, and there's a lunch that goes along with that. If you want to help plan for the First Parish in Bedford Bake Off, it's initiated by the youth, actually, out of sort of like a team of people who's... What? Someone sneezed. Okay, it's just me. I'm distracted by a sneeze. Let's see. So it's going to be like the chili cook-off, and this is a way for people to bring something and have a little fun competition. There's a group of people who are starting to think about this. They're going to meet today. You are invited too, because it's just starting to be thought about. It will be today at 11:30 in 201, otherwise known as Maria's room at the top of the stairs. And we hope you'll go. Annie will be there looking on, and you can stay at the online link on Zoom or go there in person. And that's it. We like to have a caring cards table after church, led by the lay pastoral care team. We're going to postpone that till next week because of the slippery snow that kept a bunch of folks at home. But what that means is, in case no one has said it in a while, if you have someone in your heart you're thinking of who you know would be touched by receiving a card from our community, you can go to that table. It doesn't have to be that lay pastoral thought up the names. It can be that you know someone whose name you'd like to be on a card, and anyone who wants to sign can do that. So keep that in mind for next week. All right, welcome one and all. And now, if you're willing and able to stand, we'll join in our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en espíritu de amor, y ayudarnos a los unos a los otros. And Lisa Maria is going to lead us in a time for all ages.
Good morning. I have a story, a historical story today for you. Who here has heard of Thomas Starr King? Show of hands. Okay, not bad, not bad. Well, you're all going to by the end of this. Just also, I wonder what the show of hands is like on Zoom there as well, but I can't see that screen. Anyways, a long time ago, when railroad trains were still brand new, and the United States had only 24 stars on its flag instead of the 50 it has today, there lived a boy whose name was Starr. Now, that might seem like an odd name to some people today, not a lot of people today, because people name their kids all kinds of things today. But actually, Starr was really his middle name. His full name was Thomas Starr King. Back then, children often were given a middle name that some people do today, which is the name that one of the parents had before they were married. And so Thomas's mother, her last name had been Starr, spelled with 2 R's. So because there were a lot of Thomases around, a lot of people called him Starr. They didn't call him Thomas. Now, Starr was very bright, and just like his name, because he was bright in school, and he was bright at home. He helped out. He did his chores without complaints. Don't know what that's like. I mean, even I complain about my chores. Anyways, he was bright at the Universalist church that his family went to, where his father was a minister, and he was always happy to help. He carried hymnals, polished the candle holders, dusted the pews. But most of all, Starr loved to ring the church bell. And on Sunday mornings, bright and early, he'd climb the stairs to the bell tower, grab the rope with both hands, and pull. Bong would go the bell, and up would go Starr. That rope would pull him right off his feet, and he'd come down again, thump on the floor, and then the bell would go dong, and then Starr would go right back up again. It's a good, fun ride. Has anybody ever rung the bell and gone for a ride like that? It's good times. It's very good times, yes. Now, Starr loved it so much, but he also loved other music too, and he loved singing at church, where lots of people sang in harmony, and some sang high, and some sang low, and some sang in between. But all the different voices worked together to create one glorious, harmonious song. Starr liked everything about church. He said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a minister in a church, just like my father. And Starr was. When he was 21, he was a minister in a Universalist church. But then, when he was 24, he changed churches. He became a minister in a Unitarian church. See, back then, there weren't Unitarian Universalist churches. There were the Unitarians, and there were the Universalists. Now, some of his friends weren't happy about this. They said, Starr, how can you leave Universalism? And he would say, I'm not leaving Universalism. I can be a Unitarian and a Universalist at the same time. I'm just singing a different part. We will still all make one glorious song together. Now, in 1860, when the railroads were going crisscross across the states, and there are 33 stars now on the American flag, Starr left Boston for going all the way to San Francisco, California. Now, his friends were sad to see him go, And they said, how can you leave and go so far away? And he said, I'm not leaving our country. I'm just moving to a different state. And all the states work together to make one glorious song. But the year was 1860, and not everybody agreed with Thomas Starr King. The Civil War was coming, and the United States as a nation was being torn apart. Some states to the north and some states to the south. Stars were coming off the flag. Now, California was way out in the west, and no one was really sure which way it would go. Thomas Starr King was sure that the states should stay together. One nation, indivisible, is what he said, and he set out to convince everyone in California of that too. Now, he was a minister at his church in San Francisco, and he preached there, but he also traveled around the state, and he made speeches at other churches and in towns and in mining camps and in great lecture halls and under simple canvas tents. He made speeches in front of thousands and thousands. Now, I could tell you he convinced everybody, but you all know that's not true, because that never happens. But he convinced enough, which does sometimes happen. And in 1861, California voted to stay in the Union and keep its star on the American flag. A general in the Union Army said, Thomas Starr King saved California for the Union, and that helped the North win the war. The people of California still remember Thomas to this day. They've put a statue of him at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and they sent another statue of him to Washington, D.C. He also has 2 mountains named after him, one up in New Hampshire's White Mountains. Maybe some of you have hiked it before, possibly. If you haven't, it's a good time. Enjoy. Or if you ever get out to Yosemite National Park, there's a mountain named after him out there. And both Unitarians and Universalists, we still remember him. And his name is on one of the schools where some of our ministers, and where I went to school for the first time at seminary, Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California. So Thomas set out to have many parts sing one glorious song together from his love of singing and making music in his church as a child. Thank you all for listening so very much. I invite our kiddos to come with me and Mr. Richard. Fantastic times this morning we're going to have.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to light a candle for all of the many joys and concerns that I know we are keeping silently in our hearts. Love to everyone.
This is indeed a community of big and small joys, and I love that we can share those with each other. Though the reading this morning was written by another UU minister, obviously talking about a different UU community, it rings so true to me about ours, this being a home that love built by the founders and the people and the children and the youth and the choir, and by so many of you who do so much good work on committees and by volunteering and on task teams and showing up to keep this place running. We also, in addition to all that good work, need, of course, money to keep this place running. And we invite you to give generously to this morning's offering to sustain this community.
Thank you, Sandra. Our reading this morning is from an article in the UU World magazine from 2012. It's called Who Really Said That? Despite the value that we place upon critical thinking, Unitarian Universalists possess an active rumor mill. Amongst its productions are sayings attributed to beloved historical figures. John Murray, the 18th century Universalist, is quoted as saying, "Give them not hell but hope and courage." The 16th century Transylvanian Unitarian Francis David is supposed to have said, "We need not think alike to love alike." You've heard that, right? These have become flagship quotations for our faith, printed in numerous books, and are quoted in countless sermons and newsletters and websites. Both are readings in our current hymnal. They are the first and sometimes the only things that readily come to mind when we think about these historical figures. However, neither of these quotations is genuine. Each became attached to its supposed author in the mid-20th century. The first was composed for a pamphlet published in 1951. The second was borrowed from the English Methodist founder, John Wesley. No one who has quoted Francis David as saying, "We need not think alike to love alike," has ever cited a source. Furthermore, the saying is almost identical to a well-attested quotation from the Methodist founder, John Wesley, who asked in a sermon on Catholic spirit, "Though we cannot think alike, may we not love alike?" To my knowledge, no serious scholar of the Transylvanian Reformation has ever mentioned the quote. The attribution to David surfaced for the first time in the early 1960s. Richard Boca heard it while on a tour in Transylvania in 1964. He published it in a pamphlet, A Universe of Common Freedom, 1968, whence it made its way to John Bjorn's and Forrest Church's book titled A Chosen Faith, and then to many other UU publications.
I was, as they say on the internet, today years old, when I learned that Francis David didn't actually say we need not think alike to love alike. Well, it wasn't today, actually. It was about 3 weeks ago when I was preparing this sermon. I was thinking, the theme for February is love, and I've been having so many different kinds of conversations about disagreement and conflict and love, and that would be a good topic, and I can throw in some UU history too, and so I went to go find out exactly when David had said this and in what context. And of course, I discovered that he hadn't. I was disappointed because I had this quote attributed to Francis David pinned to my bulletin board when I was growing up. Those of you who heard my sermon about Article 2 of the UUA bylaws are probably not surprised to learn that a girl who had the 7 principles and the purposes of the UUA on her wall also had quotes from Transylvanian Unitarians pinned to her bulletin board as a child. But this particular quote was important to me. As I've mentioned in other sermons, when I was growing up, my closest friends in elementary, middle, and high school were various types of conservative and often fundamentalist Christians. We had a Missouri Synod Lutheran, a devout Catholic, a Mormon, one person who went to the small and very serious Bible church, and one person who went to the larger, more fun megachurch in town. They were all different, but none so different as the Unitarian Universalist in the group. Still, we got along really well. We had a close tight-knit friend group, and we really supported each other. We played softball together and later ran on the cross-country team together. And I remember fondly how, even though I was much slower than most of my peers, they truly supported me, and when I broke a personal record that was important to me, they hoisted me on their shoulders and brought me around in a celebratory march. One of those friends was the only person I went to when I was struggling with my eating disorder in high school. And we also got our friend, the Mormon one, elected prom queen. And she had to go make her own dress because they didn't sell any modest enough prom dresses for a Mormon. But despite that, we were able to band together and make it happen. But there were also some other aspects that only in later years I really saw about our friend group and how it functioned. For one thing, I had a friend who, unfortunately, I was totally smitten with for all of junior high and high school. I say unfortunately because he was very gay, and he was not feeling comfortable, as you can imagine, coming out, given the way that most of our friends were. I couldn't blame him because I didn't even come out to myself as bisexual until I got away from that friend group and went to boarding school. And then there was also the fact that one of our friends who went too far with her boyfriend was shunned from the group. I didn't know the term slut-shaming at the time, but that is what it was. And then there was the always present efforts at conversion. Were we a diverse group of friends with different theological beliefs who nevertheless were able to love and support each other and have fun? Or was it religious control and bullying? David Ferenc, the way I understand you pronounce what became known as Francis David, as I learned it, was a founder of Transylvanian Unitarianism. He was born in 1520. He was raised Catholic and went to study Catholic theology in Germany, where he became a Catholic parson. He returned to Transylvania, and there the Lutheran Reformation had taken hold. There were Lutheran ideas spreading, and he joined in, becoming a Lutheran pastor. But he was not done yet. He then became involved in Calvinism and joined the Reformed Church, where he became the bishop of the Hungarian churches in Transylvania, and then became appointed court preacher for the prince, whose name is even harder to pronounce, and we'll see how I do, but János Zsigmond Szapolyai, or as I was taught growing up, John Sigismund, the first and only Unitarian king. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Our protagonist was still Calvinist. But the prince allowed him to do research in the Royal Library on theological topics, and you know where critical thinking and reading can lead you. He also had some help from Giorgio Biandrata, an Italian doctor who came to the court. Biandrata had some ideas about the Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit combo that makes up God in Orthodox Christianity. Namely, Biandrata didn't think that there was such a thing as the Trinity. He believed in one form of God, Unitarian. And David was finding the same thing as he looked at scriptural evidence. He was influenced by other anti-Trinitarian and humanist thinkers, including Miguel Serveto, or Michael Servetus, as I also learned, who was burned at the stake for his anti-Trinitarian beliefs, as well as his condemnation of infant baptism. That, and also sort of for trolling John Calvin, which wasn't a wise idea in the context of the time, but I digress. The point is that David was getting dangerous ideas, Unitarian ideas. He wanted to restore the pure Christianity of Jesus, and he convinced the prince, who became the king, of these ideas. But his goal was not a Unitarian takeover. Though that was a popular move at the time, You get a Catholic monarch, everybody has to be Catholic. You get a Protestant monarch, everybody has to be Protestant. But that was not the end goal in this case. No, in fact, in 1568, at a gathering of nobility and royalty from Hungary and Transylvania, an edict went forth, the Edict of Torda. And it said that you could lawfully be a Catholic, a Lutheran, a Calvinist, or a Unitarian. Not coincidentally, all four of the religious traditions that David had tried. He tried them all, and I guess he thought they were all okay. When I learned this history as a UU, I remember learning it in glowing terms. There was a Unitarian king, and he declared religious freedom back in 1568. We need not think alike to love alike was the core belief. And Unitarians knew this even back in the 16th century. Except it was actually said by John Wesley, the Methodist. The Methodist. Methodists who are still fighting about whether queer people belong in their denomination. I imagine that the Methodists, who do not think that queer people belong in their denomination, might argue that they have a theological difference of opinion, that they love the sinner and hate the sin. And okay, you can have a theological difference of opinion, but what is the behavior? Because if you tell someone you can't bring your partner to church, or you can't be ordained if you live your full truth, or you can't get married, then that's not loving behavior. We need not think alike to love alike, but we do have to love alike to love alike. Well, maybe not exactly alike. We had a wonderful sermon from Reverend Megan about love languages and how maybe one person can offer acts of service and another can offer words of affirmation. And as long as those are experienced as love, then that's love. But nobody experiences being told they can't participate in their faith community as loving. Thomas Starr King knew this. He knew that you could be a Unitarian or a Universalist, and they were both valid, and you could think differently. But when it came to thinking differently about whether it's okay to engage in slavery and go away from the Union, that wasn't just a difference of opinion. It was important to fight for love in that context. And it's easy for us to look at history, or to even look at a contemporary group like the Methodists, and shake our head and feel clear about the difference between thinking alike and loving alike. But I have to tell you, there are a lot of situations these days where I do not feel clear. For example, there's Harry Potter. If your social media feed is anything like mine, and it very well might not be, it was recently filled with memes and snarky posts and heartfelt essays all about Hogwarts Legacy, the new video game that came out. If you are thinking, what are you talking about? Let me catch you up. J.K. Rowling wrote a beloved children's series called Harry Potter. We probably all know this. It was a worldwide phenomenon, and I, too, fully participated. I went to Walmart at midnight for the book releases as a kid, and I saw all the movies in theaters, and I've been to Harry Potter World at Universal Studios twice. And also, we've learned in more recent years that J.K. Rowling is what's called a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. She's transphobic, openly, unapologetically. And as we've learned that and taken a second glance at those beloved books, we've seen some other things that we don't like so much. the fat phobia in the way the Dursleys are described, anti-Semitism in the way goblins are construed. And so this new video game came out recently, a video game set at Hogwarts, the fictional school in Harry Potter. And that's when all hell broke loose on my Facebook feed. Do people who now reject all things Harry Potter and those who still love the universe that Rowling created have a simple difference of opinion? Do they just not think alike? Or are those who continue to participate in her creations behaving in ways that are not loving, hurting the trans people in their community? I don't know the answer. And I don't know what I will do if Moira wants to read Harry Potter, which is very likely. It's incredibly popular. I don't know what I'll say, and honestly, I feel pretty grateful that so far she hasn't asked about it, and I don't play video games, and I don't feel any strong need to continue to engage in the fantasy world of Harry Potter. But there are other questions where I most certainly do have to engage, areas where I might even have authority to make decisions. What about thinking and loving alike when it comes to COVID protocols? We sent out a survey to the congregation, and 113 of you replied, which I think is incredible. And I really thank everyone who replied for taking the time to engage with the process. The responses were, as you may presume, wide-ranging and on a bit of a bell curve. 30% felt neutral about masking. That was the middle and the largest chunk. 20% prefer that everyone be masked, but would still come if we dropped the masking requirement in the sanctuary on Sunday mornings. 19%, almost the same amount of people, feel that masking detracts from worship, but are willing to do it. 7% would strongly prefer everyone be masked, but are okay with making use of the page room as a safer, fully masked space. 5% would not come if the masking requirement were dropped. 3% do not come because of the masking requirement. And the other 16%? Well, that was 17 individual responses. Very UU of us. The written responses varied, from some people saying that the science clearly indicates that masking does not reduce transmission, and others saying the science clearly indicates that universal masking is the way to go. One person said, "Masking isn't hard. I don't see what the fuss is about." And another said, "Seriously, I don't even have to mask at the dentist anymore. Why do I need to mask in church?" People wrote about their own vulnerabilities, or the vulnerabilities of their family members. People wrote about how hard it is to get their kids to come to church if they have to wear a mask. I will send out a written summary, as well as a notice on when our task force will meet, so that everyone can be up to date on the process. But one person wrote back to me and recommended a podcast about how liberals killed masking. It was a long podcast. It was more than 2 hours. And I listened to the entire thing. I listened to it yesterday while I was driving my housemate's mother to dialysis in the early morning and unloading my dishwasher and making muffins and preparing to demolish our guest room, which we did yesterday in prep for renovations. The podcast was very interesting, and there were parts of it that I found incredibly compelling and thought-provoking. And there were parts of it that I found condescending and out of touch. I did not come away from it with clear answers, but I did come away with a stronger commitment to some basic COVID risk mitigation, I listened to the podcast because I love this congregant. And we do not think exactly alike. But I want to make sure that I am behaving in a loving way. And I know that listening with an open mind and heart is loving. That much I'm clear on. The thing is, we don't have to think alike on COVID. I know that some people think it's overblown and everyone I know has had it anyway and I'm tired and we need to get back to normal. And I know that some people think that to downplay COVID and to not take it seriously is ableist at best, genocide at worst. And these people are UUs. They're thinking critically. We do not need to think alike, but in order to love alike, we have to agree on what loving behavior is. If I show up unmasked and you do not feel safe with me being unmasked, is that loving behavior? When is it a difference of opinion, a different interpretation of the same scientific data? And when is it a matter of loving those who are most vulnerable? In 1571, a mere 3 years after the Edict of Torda that allowed for 4 lawful religions, a Roman Catholic took the throne in Transylvania. And a year later, after a controversy surrounding the necessity of invoking Jesus Christ in prayer, which our protagonist, Francis David, had come to think was not necessary, our hero was sentenced to life in prison. He died imprisoned in 1579. The Unitarian reign of religious freedom was short-lived and without a happy ending. Except that I am preaching about this man today. And many UUs all over the continent know his name. We even know the quote that he didn't actually say. And it matters. Because as Unitarian Universalists, we have the great gift and incredible responsibility of navigating together what we think and love. No creed is going to tell me whether it's okay to let my kid read Harry Potter. No bishop is going to tell us what COVID protocols we should use at church. We, all of us, messy, imperfect people with smart brains and good hearts, we have to figure it out together. We have to gather together, thinking differently, and somehow find out what it means to love alike. What it means to put love at the center of Unitarian Universalism. What it means when we say love is the spirit of this church. What an important, exciting, daunting quest we are on here together. Not just as we try to figure out whether we will require masks in the sanctuary on Sunday mornings, but as we try to figure out how in the heck we can think differently and love each other well. I am grateful to be on this journey with you, on this wonderful and daunting quest, learning from you, listening to you, and finding new ways to think and new ways to love. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join us in our closing hymn, We Would Be One, a classic hymn that was written by the youth of the Unitarian and the Universalists movement, who came together to form liberal religious youth when they knew that we could think differently and love together as one faith movement. May we keep finding ways to be one in a home that love built, thinking differently and learning through struggle and confusion and stumbling with our imperfect hearts and minds towards truly loving one another.